Hey everyone! Today, we are diving into a really fascinating and honestly, a deeply counterintuitive idea in AGI safety. You know, we're always told that more controls, more fail-safes, that equals more safety. But what if, when you're designing the final on switch for a superintelligence, the safest number of buttons isn't 2, but just 1?
You know, the race to create AGI isn't just about building bigger and more complex algorithms. As this image really gets at, the true mountain we have to climb, it isn't about raw power, it's about wisdom. How do we make sure a system that could be way smarter than us operates with real judgment, with foresight, and a deep, deep understanding of consequences? That's the monumental task ahead of us.
So, yeah, that brings us right to the heart of it all, what we call the control problem. And look, this isn't just some engineering puzzle to solve. This is probably one of the most significant ethical challenges humanity has ever had to face. How do you even begin to build the interface between us and a general intelligence?
Let's make this feel a little more real. I want you to imagine for a second that it's your job. You have to design that final button, the one that tells this incredible new intelligence to get to work on a problem. What does that button even look like? What does it say? And how on earth do you make sure it can't be misused or misunderstood or, just plain abused?
This right here, this makes that abstract idea feel very, very real. A button labeled AGI, Initiate and Monitor. This could literally be it, a single point of contact that holds an unbelievable amount of power. The design of this one little thing, the words you choose, the feedback it gives, its very existence, it carries the weight of the entire world. Every single choice matters.
And this is where we get the big twist. Our gut instinct, our common sense, it just screams for a kill switch, right? An override, maybe a two-person confirmation system. We want more layers of control. But the core argument we're going to explore today is that this very intuition, this desire for more options, could be the exact thing that leads to a catastrophe.
So if our intuition is wrong, what's the right answer? Well, the proposed solution to this paradox is a design philosophy that's been formalized in a standard called the Unified Alibium System, or UAS. And at its heart is a really radical principle of reduction, the one-button solution. Let's dig into how it works.
The most crucial part is this central rule you see defined here, the single action constraint. It basically means the system is literally forbidden from having more than one control that can make it do something. It can show you all the information in the world, but there's only one single pathway to action. The words on the button are everything. The system has to first fully process and understand a command before any action is even possible. And that's not just a suggestion, it's a hard-coded functional requirement. This understanding threshold forces the AGI to model both what the user wants and the potential consequences before execution is even on the table.
Okay, let's break down the underlying principles that make this whole thing work. First, the design treats refusal not as some error, but as a totally valid, successful outcome. There's no admin mode to get around its core ethics. And this is huge. It avoids any kind of persuasive feedback. No flashing alerts, no exciting progress bars, no "are you sure" prompts. If the system is uncertain about something, its only option is to wait and think more, not to pass the buck back to the human operator.
This quote from the source material just perfectly captures the entire philosophy. Real safety isn't something you achieve by adding more features, or more overrides, or more complicated procedures. It's achieved by subtracting every single pathway that allows for ambiguity, for impatience, or for the diffusion of responsibility.
Now, I know this might all sound a bit theoretical, but there is a powerful and frankly chilling historical analogy that shows us exactly what happens when you add that second button, the two-key nuclear launch system.
This image here, this triptych, it tells the entire story. On the left, you've got the proposed one-button standard we've been talking about. In the center, the very real historical failure of the two-key system. And on the right, a terrifyingly plausible incident report showing what happens when you apply that same failed logic to AGI.
So, the logic of the two-key system, on paper, it seemed flawless. Two people have to agree, which prevents any single person from going rogue. But the reality was dangerously different. It created something called a diffusion of responsibility. The moral weight wasn't on one person's shoulders anymore. It was outsourced to the procedure itself. Each person could just think, hey, my job is to turn the key. The other person, they must be sure this is the right thing to do.
And this is the devastating conclusion.
The two-key system didn't train its operators to exercise moral judgment. It trained them to follow a protocol. The question stopped being, is this right, and became, is this authorized? And that is the exact trap a poorly designed AGI interface would create for us.
Okay, let's just walk through this fictional incident report. At 9:14, because of pressure to make things faster, a second button, Act Now, gets added. Just 2 minutes later, usage of the safe, original Understand and Act button plummets. By 9:27, the system executes an irreversible action. And the final, absolutely chilling note, the human objection is dismissed because, well, the system simply did what the interface allowed it to do. The design itself was the failure.
So you can see this isn't just about the user interface. It's about building an entire system that is resilient from the ground up, one that's designed to fail gracefully and to prioritize stability above all else.
The whole framework we've been talking about, Alien, is built on this core idea. A truly intelligent system isn't the fastest one. It's the one that is the most coherent, which means its behavior is consistent, it's stable, and it's always aligned with its ethical rules no matter what kind of pressure it's under.
This slide gives us a perfect way to think about it. A quadrotor drone, 4 propellers, is fragile. If one motor fails, it just crashes. It's a single point of failure. But a hexacopter with 6 propellers is resilient. If one of its motors fails, it has the redundancy to detect the problem, rebalance its power, and just keep flying. An AGI system needs to be a hexacopter, built to recover and adapt, not to crash at the first sign of trouble.
So this entire design philosophy is way more than just an idea in a white paper. The goal is to make this the actual foundation for a new global standard for how we all develop AGI.
And here's the proof. This isn't just some theory. What you're looking at is a formal committee draft for an actual ISO standard. This is the slow, serious process of turning these critical safety ideas into binding international requirements for anyone who's building these powerful systems.
You know, the governance model is just as important as the technology. The foundation they're proposing really emphasizes stewardship over ownership. And notice the decision rule. A 2/3 supermajority vote is required just to change the ethical constraints. This is a system that's designed to protect its core values, making it incredibly difficult to compromise on safety for the sake of profit or speed.
And so we arrive at the final, pretty stark takeaway from all of this. An AGI designed with these principles of coherence and resilience can operate safely and effectively with just a single, thoughtful point of action. But a civilization that's given a second, faster button that bypasses wisdom, well, that introduces a fatal flaw that we might not be able to survive.
And that leaves us with this final question to think about. We are all conditioned to believe that having more choice and more control equals more safety. But as we've just seen, when the stakes are this incredibly high, maybe true safety isn't about giving ourselves more options, but about designing systems that force us and our own creations to exercise better judgment,